Thanks so much for tuning into this exciting conversation about a very exciting industry. I'm happy to be joined by some very powerful women who are doing some awesome things. First, I'll introduce myself. So my name is Amanda Siebert. I write about psychedelics and cannabis for a variety of different publications, for Forbes, for Cannabis Health, for the Dales Report. I'm also the editor at two different publications, Cannabis Health and Inside the Jar. I'm working on a book, whatever. I write about drugs. It's a lot of fun. I'm really excited to be moderating this conversation. I will pass it over to you, Stacey. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Amanda. This is a really, really exciting discussion to be having today. So to briefly introduce myself, I am the Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder of a company called Numinous Wellness. And we're really committed to increasing access in this space through developing scientific knowledge and rigor, but also really prioritizing quality care and how we can actually move forward with helping and being of service on that side of things. So happy to share a little bit more about my background, and also just really looking forward to the discussion today.
Fantastic. I mean, it looks like we're still waiting on a couple of people. Thanks for the comment there in the chat, Axel. That's so kind of you. So Stacey, yeah, I know that Numinous is doing some huge, very massive things, reach some huge milestones as far as the industry goes. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I'm sure that our audience is curious about, maybe they've heard a little bit today about Section 56 exemptions and all of this sort of thing. Tell me a little bit about what Numinous is doing as far as that sort of thing. Yeah, I'll let you speak to that.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, it's been such an exciting time. There's just been so much progress in this space. It can be a little hard to keep up if you're not doing it full time, to be honest. So some of the things that I'm just personally really thrilled around are some of the recent research, and in particular, I'm really grateful for the releases that MAPS USA just put out around the results of their MDMA for PTSD study. I think the results really speak for themselves, but just wow, what a measure of efficacy, what a measure of impact and the possibility of this space. And having the results of that many year effort finally come to light, and having that be the extent of the results is, I think that's a massive step for this entire space. And just always want to offer my never-ending gratitude to Rick and to Amy and to Bara and to the whole team at MAPS for just tirelessly working to get us to this stage. So yeah, definitely want to start there and just give a big nod to MAPS for that great work.
Totally. It's wild to think about that's been going on since 1985. Wow. Well, hi, Barinder. Great.
Hi, how are you guys?
Great. We were just doing a little bit of chit chat. I'll let you introduce yourself if you want. Thanks so much for joining us for this exciting panel.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. Sorry, I've had connectivity issues the last 2 days in multifamily towers. It's always a thing during busy hours. Barinder Rasode, I'm CEO of Grow Tech Labs, also one of the founders of Haven Life, and proud to be a part of this panel with some fascinating women who've just, been making such a big contribution.
Thank you so much for being here. No worries about the tech issues. It happens all the time. Oh, and just in time there, Salimeh. Yay, gang's all here.
Yay.
Oh, this is so exciting. This is this is great. Salimeh, we've just been having a little bit of introductory chit chat, but I would love to pass the mic over to you if you want to introduce yourself and tell the world what your specialty is in this magical world of psychedelics.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sorry for the delay. I was just having some tech issues, but great to see you all. Great to see you. We're still after the lunar eclipse. Things are still, grounding back. Well, it's an honor and pleasure to be with all of you. These ladies that I'm looking at are very special to my heart, each in their own way. And it's an honor to be here. So a little bit about me. My name is Salimeh Tabrizi, and I wear different hats in the psychedelic space. My main hat is a therapist and an integration coach for individuals mostly who have gone through transformative experiences with ayahuasca, or psilocybin or iboga. But I do once in a while, work with individuals who are very new to the space as well. And usually this is a 3 to 6 month program, and clients can connect with me at the beginning of that time. And this is really about up-leveling themselves into the next phase of their facilitation, expansion, as well as just mission and service in the world. That program usually includes a facilitated journey. Right now, I'm mostly working with ayahuasca and mushrooms, actually both together. And so that's a little bit about my coaching and counseling hat. On the other side, I'm also the co-founder of one of the founding members of the Canadian Psychedelic Association, which is a unifying voice for psychedelics in Canada right now, looking at ethics, policy, education, advocacy on both the municipal and the federal level. Thank you so much.
Salimeh, I just want to do a special personal shout out while we're waiting for everything to start. Like, you really helped open my heart and mind and soul to psychedelics. And I've shared personally with you more than I've probably shared with even close people in my life. And I just want to do a very special thank you for your Spirit Plant Medicine Conference that you organize, and just the connectivity you do with each individual you meet. So I just want to take that second to do that. Thank you.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been such an honor getting to know you, and also seeing how you stepped up for the cannabis space as well in such a deep way. And yeah, I think we're all showing a different kind of paradigm of holding space, growing as leaders within the community. And so I think it's very special. And thank you. I forgot to mention, but the Cannabis Hemp Conference was a very sweet part of my life for 4 years. It was from 2015 to 2018, and it was about bringing cannabis to a very I would say, again, uplifted, elevated space, whereas this plant has not always gotten the reverence and respect that it absolutely deserves.
Thank you so much for that, Salimeh. And Barinder, totally agree with you. Salimeh has moved a lot of stones in this industry. Really grateful to be connected with her and with all of you. Wow, lots of very magical things happening in here. So I'm just going to jump on into these questions, because I think we have a lot to talk about between the four of us. So as I've just said, I mean, we've seen so many major milestones reached in the psychedelics industry in the last 6 to 12 months, many of them in Canada, which is exciting, and many of them involving the companies and the groups that each of you are associated with. So I guess we'll just go around. I'll start with Stacey. What's one milestone in this evolution that you've been a part of that you are most excited about? And if you want to pick two, that's cool. You can do that too.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I'll just take a moment to continue the thought that we started at the beginning around MDMA. And, I'm really grateful for the collaborative spirit and agreement that we have with MAPS, and, just stepping into training and really getting to be thoughtful about how we want to see, MDMA move forward. Especially in Canada with the regulatory space and some of the shifts that are happening there is something that is very close to my heart. And I expect that we'll probably get into some of that stuff in this conversation, but that's a really, really meaningful piece for me. And I also am just really, I keep saying grateful, but it is the right word. I'm really also grateful to see Health Canada and some of the shifts that they've been making, and how receptive they've been to just hearing from all sorts of different folks in the industry, and really trying to take a proactive approach to being thought leaders. And how this is going to roll out from a regulatory perspective has been just so heartening and so appreciated. And it's just been a total pleasure working with them on this. So I'm incredibly inspired to see where those two threads converge, and where we see, shifting paradigms and regulatory structures and environmental conditions meet the exciting, validation and scientific discovery, but also, where those things become really, I think my heart is it's all to help people, you know, and that's gonna open up as these threads really converge in a meaningful way. So that's really what gets me super, super juiced and excited at the moment.
Fantastic. Now I know I like directed the question at Stacey, but like, let's just keep this, like, if someone has something they want to like jump in and add, we all know each other. It's all cool. We can just sort of make this a fun kind of conversation. I mean, just for conversation's sake, obviously I'll pass it on to you, Barinder, but yeah, I just wanted to open it up. Let's keep this fun and casual.
Thank you. Yeah, Stacey, I think it was over about 2.5 years ago when GrowTech founded True Haven, which is an educational platform that shares information to try and normalize it. You know, my stepping into both cannabis and psychedelics is to shed a different light on it because of my previous backgrounds. I, you know, haven't had the honor of being introduced to plant medicines early on in my life, and I really wish I had. And so when I put energy into something, it's really with the view of taking it to the people who I know from my circles and my community that are quite entrenched in some very serious stereotypes. So what I think has been the best thing that's happened in the last year is patients getting access through the Section 56 exemption is really, I think, not only charted a course for people to be open to what these medicines can do, but unfortunately, sometimes it does take a regulator to legitimize it for papers to start printing things and other health organizations to start having those conversations, which I think is really, really a big, big milestone. And I think the other thing that always warms my heart is now that we can talk about some of the research that was done before the whole shutdown in your brain on drugs, male pale stale, shutdown of psychedelic research, right? Now some of those research studies are actually being referred to that were done in the 50s and early 60s. And those are two big milestones for me, is the personal exemption for patients recognized by government, and the fact that some of the work that had been shelved is now being brought back out into light.
Totally, that's huge. And a lot of that early work too happened here, like in Saskatchewan, and like the Hollywood Hospital is a couple of blocks away from where I live, like, or we used to be there anyway. But it's wild that all of this really important science happened so long ago and so close to home. Salimeh, I would love to hear your thoughts on the evolution, especially because you've been working with these medicines for such a long time.
Yeah, thank you. And I still feel like I'm a newbie in this space because, you know, just looking at like, and I really have to honor the people that we are stepping on their shoulders up, and also the history of even psilocybin. I was just like looking up things today. I'm kind of preparing for this call, and one of the earliest cave paintings for psilocybin was 4,000 years ago. And, you know, peyote has been used by the indigenous for over 3,000. Now, we won't even go into the Egyptian use of cannabis, but, you know, God knows really how long that civilization was going on for. I don't think that it was just in the last 4,000 years, you know. So, but let's come back to like the last even 5 years, because a lot has happened since then. But just for CPA's role and what has shifted. So the Canadian Psychedelic Association came into being December 2019. And, you know, even prior to that, there was some shifts in movement happening. But one of the major things was that we actually went to, there was a motion that was passed in the Vancouver City Council against, and I know many of you know about that, against the use of psilocybin in online dispensaries. And that was actually Dana Larson's piece that came through. And so we gathered together as a community. The CPA brought in a petition together, and Mark Hayden from MAPS Canada supported that. And so we took that to the city council, and it was such an educational event, even on a municipal level. And then 1 year after, Vancouver actually decriminalized. And so, you know, that's just like these little steps that can make a big impact. And so Vancouver right now has unanimously, I think there's only one person actually that didn't want that on the city council, but they've pushed this forward, and they're waiting for the federal government. And so right now, Vancouver's thinking, okay, if federal government passes this, it means that possession would be agreed upon. But possession is not everything, as we've seen what has happened in the United States with their decrim nature. They have created protection around the grow and sharing of these medicines. So we're still kind of behind in that regard in Vancouver, because yes, it's good enough that you have possession, but people need to have access so that they can actually share it, so that our underground therapists can actually be protected as well when they're giving the medicine. So that's one piece. And then even if Vancouver gets decriminalization, what about Surrey? What about North Van? What if some person who goes like, these other municipalities need to be protected as well? So we're continuing to work on that. And then one more exciting thing that has happened just actually in this week that we're talking about, two of our board members, Trevor Miller and Dr. Pam Crisco, are meeting with Health Canada MPs, so members of parliament, to talk about the MAID campaign. And the MAID campaign is similar to what Barinder was saying with what their still has done in regards to getting the 30 exemption 56s to be able to have psilocybin for end of life, for patients who are at end of life with their anxiety. So the MAID campaign is similar to individuals asking for medical assistance at end of life. So we also want to include that psychedelics in that conversation and that campaign as well. So kind of like all different, maybe as Stacey was talking about, like coming to Health Canada from all kinds of directions and showing them that really there's a massive wave here that, and I'm happy to hear that they're open to.
I love that this pressure is being put on them in all these different ways. It's so cool to hear about. Yeah, really, really fascinating stuff. Now, I wanted to sort of, Barinder, this next question, what you were saying sort of segues really nicely into that, how, you didn't have the opportunity when you were younger to sort of be introduced to plant medicines. Now, I want to know from each of you on sort of more of a personal level, how has your interpretation or the idea of what psychedelics can do evolved over the years? What are some things that you believe now about psychedelics that perhaps you didn't believe 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah. And remembering that I'm South Asian, Sikh Punjabi, so my heritage, technically women aren't supposed to drink. So my parents actually don't even know I would indulge in a glass of wine. Wow. So really stepping out, it has a completely different context, especially for women who live their very Canadian lives with one foot very solidly still kept with the pressures and expectations of not wanting to disappoint loving families. And so for me, my introduction to cannabis came through a friend's mom's experience when she was dying of cancer. And then watching her dad be able to deal with his anxiety. What I found is, for me personally, cannabis deals with the symptoms of some ailments. But personally, I find that psychedelics actually go in and cure and reprogram the brain, which for me, cannabis can't do. Some people may argue that it does do that for them. So my most compelling experience came, my brother passed away of a heart attack suddenly 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. At that point, we didn't have a good relationship. The impact that had on all of the programs that I was running, like Niche and others, was quite significant because I went very, very dark. And it wasn't until I did what would be, some would define as a medical dose of a psilocybin journey with psychedelic mushrooms, that in the 5 hours I was able to process not only his death and the acceptance of the grief that I would have for the rest of my life, but also to step outside myself and look at all the things I was being really hard on myself for, because I never realized I was only 2 years older than him. So I was a child myself for all the things I was carrying this huge blame for. And that realization saved me, because I don't think that kind of trauma for me, which not only signified the loss of somebody I should have loved more when he was around, but the burden that he took for me in helping me raise my 3 kids, being a single mom in the South Asian culture is very difficult, but also with my parents. He did all of the caregiving, and that avalanche would have significantly and fundamentally not only changed my well-being, but the impact that I would have had on the things I was responsible for, like my children, my parents, and my work. I would not have been able to carry that. So when I have people who I sat on the board of Fraser Health with, or I was elected with, or friends and family who come from very traditional cultures, hear me share that story, the judgment fades away because it's tied to something so traumatic, and it's very unfortunate. But because of what happened in the late 60s and then in the 70s, when all of these medicines became underground party drugs, the real realization is going to come from the authentic stories. And so for me, that's my personal story. I microdosed today, happy microdosing day. I took a 5 mg mint of LSD, and I think that more women, especially around women's health issues, really need to not only be educated, but fully embrace the experience, because it is not one of just a psychedelic experience. It's one of a wellness experience that can fundamentally make you whole so that you're able to contribute better to all aspects of your life.
Totally. Wow, that is so profound. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's like personal. I love that we all have like stories, man. We all have them. Storytelling. Yeah. We may not all speak the same language, but we all have stories. So thank you for speaking to that, Barinder. That's powerful. Stacey, Salimeh, tell me a little bit about how your ideas of psychedelics and what they're capable of. Tell me a little bit about your take on that and how that's sort of evolved over the years.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. And yeah, Barinder, I just want to say thank you for sharing that. I think it's such an offering that you give by sharing your story so authentically. And it really touched me to hear you share that. So thank you so much. Like Barinder, I wasn't an early, I wasn't introduced to psychedelics in most of my life, really. My personal story, the sort of shorter version of it is that I have deep family patterns in mental health. My whole childhood and upbringing was very, very heavily influenced by the presence of mental health issues in my family. And I experienced some childhood trauma that affected my social skills and just really my whole well-being pretty early. And so, when I was growing up, mental health was really stigmatized. We didn't speak about it. We pretended things were normal. It definitely wasn't okay to talk about alternative ways of, approaching or working with your mental health issues. It was very much something that was expected to be dealt with, internally and without any awareness by anyone else. So I think there's a couple big shifts for me. The first one was, showing up and learning about psychedelics after experiencing a health crisis in my early, late 20s. And that included a couple of near-death experiences that really affected me and, opened a window for me into altered states of consciousness and really the more spiritual nature of what it is that psychedelics can open for people. And, but, I didn't have that frame of reference yet. I just had gone through this really big experience and, had to come to face my mortality and, the questions that brings with it. Am I happy with how I've lived? Do I feel at peace with the story of my life? What do I want to change if I come through this? What is my sense of meaning about, who I am and what it means to be alive and, what the nature of the universe is, like, those kinds of questions. And so when I, thankfully recovered, I changed my whole life, and I won't go into all that, but I changed everything and started learning a lot. And this was when I really was introduced to a lot of really important topics in my life, including psychedelics. And so I showed up as a student first still am, and then a recipient of psychedelic wisdom. I went through a really deep healing journey, processing my own trauma and PTSD and just everything that had come with my life. So the first shift was really around stigmatization, awareness, new understanding, breaking down my own barriers to, what was in the way of me getting into this work. And then I'd say the more recent shift, which has actually been incredibly meaningful for me as a person, has been the deeper, more spiritual nature of this work. And I guess the cultural and just the context more generally in which psychedelic experiences are often experienced. So, the embodied, the somatic, the integral, conscious, the universal, the cultural, the individually perceived. Like there's so many layers and windows to this space and to the psychedelic experience. So that's been where I've been really deepening my appreciation and my learning and my work lately. And I don't think I would have seen that coming a couple of years ago, never mind, 5, 10. Yeah.
Wow, incredible. I love that we're getting so deep. And I love the way you mentioned the layers. Like there are so many layers to this work. You just like touch the surface and think, like once you pull one off, anyway, very cool. Really, really love the way you put that. Salimeh, wow, would love to hear from you on this topic. And I know I'm the moderator, but if you guys don't mind, I would love to chime in on this question just because we're making our own rules.
Exactly. No, you read my mind. I was going to say, please also share, because each one of us, I feel like, has gone through such a transformation just in the last couple of years. And really listening to the guidance of the medicine has been, I can just feel it. Like there's such depth in this conversation right now too. And I really appreciate you, Barinder, sharing such a personal story. I think you're right. Like the judgment, the stigma, all of it melts away when it's just a heartfelt story, especially about family. I think that's one thing we can all agree on. We have lineages of trauma that we're cleaning up. First, we're cleaning up our own kind of fears, traumas, and beliefs, and then we actually are doing the work for our families and being that kind of guardian and light keeper within our family, just inviting our family members to come in. And I know each one of you has done that in that way, and me too. So for me, when I first connected with Aya, I think many of us know, like, if there's like life before ayahuasca or life before a lot of the psychedelics, and then there's life after. And for me, repressed sexual trauma came up in that year. After, I would say like 25, 26 years of not knowing that has happened. And I know many of us, again, on the front lines are clearing these energies. And so the sexual trauma piece put me into a whole different paradigm of who I was and everything that I knew before then, and all the things started to make sense of like, why was I the way that I was? Why did I have so much anxiety? Why was I not feeling trusting in relationships? Why was I raging or angry? So all of these pieces started to make sense, but I also went into psychosis for 6 months, so I always say, like, these medicines are no joke, and be careful how much you open up. Like, they're kind of like dynamite, so they're just going to blow everything up, and be ready to receive, like, and be able to hold what gets thrown open. So thankfully I had a lot of support at that time, and 6 months of psychosis of not being able to really be in the world allowed me to give a little bit more compassion for when people do go through it now. So it's, I know the medicine has trained us and continues to train each one of us so that we can just transmit that out to other people. And this is just the wave of healing. So that's kind of what I want to say around that. And yeah, it's been so profound, and I'm so grateful. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you, Creator, for giving us this gift. And I will do everything in my power to be able to return the gifts and the healing that I received. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Salimeh. And touching on, a really important piece that, this work is not all, rainbows and magic. Sometimes it's hard, ugly, dirty work, and sometimes it requires retreat and isolation and really going inside. If you don't mind, I'll just speak a little bit to my own experience with psychedelics. Now, cannabis is something that's been in my life for a long time. Psychedelics, I didn't start using until I guess about 10 years ago. But at that time, there was really no idea of, oh, this is going to make me feel better, or this is going to, make me look in the mirror and face all the skeletons in the closet that I've been avoiding, and really that started to happen gradually, even with recreational sort of use, like once a year or what have you. It wasn't until I really started writing about cannabis, and actually until I met Salimeh, love this, that my journey with psychedelics, as far as spiritual whatever, as far as really improving my life, really taking control of my mental health diagnoses, and really looking all of that in the mirror, that didn't start until probably about 2017. And wow, it's just been very, very, even to look back to that time, I don't recognize that person almost, because I feel like I've come so far. And the most exciting thing is it doesn't stop. It's just constant leveling up. So I'm so grateful. You used the word grateful too, Stacey, and it's yeah, it's worth using over and over and over again, because that's just the bottom line. I don't know that I would really be here having this conversation with all of you, or writing books, or doing any of this stuff without really doing this important, deep work of pulling back the layers and answering those really tough questions. So respect to everybody out there watching, doing that, to all of you. It's not easy. Yeah, it's really not easy. Thanks for listening. I will jump on to the next question, if that's all right. So we've probably all seen an iteration. There's a bar graph on the internet of, the number of studies that happened around psychedelics in the 60s, and then it sort of petered out. And now we're seeing this peak again. We're seeing studies about psilocybin for depression, MDMA for PTSD. What's one utilization that you're particularly passionate about? And this could be, because you found success using it that way, or because you've witnessed it in somebody else, because maybe you're researching it. Yes, if you could speak to one particular use you're particularly psyched on.
Happy to comment. And Amanda, I am, once again, I'm so grateful that you shared that. I didn't have an appreciation or a full appreciation for just how you showed up into this space and into this work. And I just think it's so important, the work that you're doing and the lens that you're bringing to it, and the fact that it comes from such an understood and embodied and integrated place is so great. It's so appreciated. So I just thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I also want to echo Barinder's shout out to Salimeh, because wow, I mean, I'm really appreciating in this conversation the role that you've played, Salimeh, listening to Amanda and Barinder, but also acknowledging, how personally you've been there for me in my life as I've been navigating the ups and downs of my personal world, and, family changes and healing journey and everything. And I just wow, you're just an incredible connector, as Barinder said, but I just really wanted to echo and just appreciate the role that you're playing in this space. So sorry, I know I keep sort of doing this before I answer your question. I just wanted to get that out, if that's okay. Yeah. And then, yeah, to your question, Amanda. So I want to say that I sort of spoke to this already, so I won't go into it again, but I'm deeply personally passionate about the work that's unfolding in trauma, but really, I think also just the contextual understanding of, what is a trauma-informed approach? what is trauma? How do we work with trauma? How do we understand it and relate to it? And I think that that is such a big, important question that this work is really just making major strides in. And as it's been such a core part of my path, that means so much to me. So that's one indication. And then I also just want to comment here on I guess some of the substance use work that's happening. And Numinous is doing a study in this space, using psilocybin for substance use disorder. And this is, I think, it's really important. It's really important that we dive into how psychedelics can interface with substance use disorders, because it's not very easy. It's not very simple. It's very complex and challenging in a lot of ways. But that's almost more reason for us to, dive into it and give it real thought and attention. And without getting too into study details or anything, I'm really proud of the fact that our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Evan Wood, and Devin Christie, our medical director, have designed a study in this space that specifically looks at polysubstance use disorder. And so that's, opiate use, stimulant use, alcohol use. But importantly, it's been designed in a way where, like polysubstance use, which is really around transferability to real world situations. Most folks who struggle with a substance use disorder struggle with more than one, and that's the real world situation. And so most research in this space is limited to a single type of substance use disorder. And that means it's really challenging for folks who are struggling with this to be accepted into studies and get care, but also that it's, we haven't been answering the question of how do you work with folks with polysubstance use disorder, and how do you navigate and demonstrate and validate approaches to caring for that very real world situation. And so that's something that is really important to me. And that's another sort of indication or area I'm super passionate about.
Amanda, for me, like the one big distinguishing factor is not about one compound. It's actually about that we're taking a shift from a pharmaceutical path where all we're doing is managing the symptoms of an illness. And I'm actually very passionate about the fact that each individual and each story needs a different plant medicine that will speak to them, or that they will be guided to, and that their experience with that plant medicine is not going to be a lifelong commitment. It's a lifelong commitment to themselves, but it's not a lifelong commitment to a prescription. So that's why I think all of the work that all of the various either quote unquote regulated, there are no real regulated companies per se, but there's research, or any of the work that was being done and has been done for a very long time, that's anecdotal through individual people's experiences, is to get that combined in one place. And that's what excites me most, is there's not going to be this expectation that one prescription will manage you for the rest of your life, versus the fact that you will manage yourself because you will be whole and can then choose how you live. That's the exciting piece for me.
I love this. It sounds like, I don't know, I'm just imagining the future when you say all this, and it makes me so happy. Those are some really important points. Like, yes, I don't by any means want to be like, this is better than this. I just, totally really love what you said there. It's so important that like every person has their own preference in medicine and treatment and their own needs. So we don't want to try and like treat this like, X and, anyway, I'm going to stop making analogies now. Go for it, Salimeh. Thank you so much, Barinder, for that.
Yeah, thank you so much as well. It's so exciting, Stacey, to hear that Numinous is taking on this, what I feel is very innovative study to really look at this, like you said, polysubstance, and make it a real life experience, and correlate it back to what like more of the population is going through, especially with stimulants, even when it's coffee. We really have to talk about how do we bring our nervous system just to a calm, right now. Like that's mostly what's needed. So how do we support people in bringing them to equilibrium? Now, one thing I want to say is that the John Hopkins studies that showed the biggest increase of healing, all of those were correlated to the mystical experience, how strong the mystical experience actually was. And so for me, it's not so much like what plant or what substance is being utilized. It's, can this person connect with God? Can they connect with Creator? And like you said, Barinder, their whole self, can they feel that? And so, yes, working with my clients, I also ask them intuitively, like, okay, what do you feel would be next for you? And, building up to, like if we're dealing with mood and appetite and sleep, I always say, okay, cannabis has to come in as a holding nurse. Like she's so wonderful in holding people in that space with especially anxiety. And then, okay, are you ready to open up a little bit more to mushrooms and have a maybe deeper mystical experience, and then ayahuasca and iboga, and so but mystical experiences can also happen through breath work. So what a treat to be able to bring hypnosis, breath work, floating all around the psychedelic space. And I would have to say, currently, again, with my clients, it's the combination of ayahuasca and psilocybin, plus all of the support and integration of inner child work and hypnosis around that has been really profound. Because I don't think any of us want, or I don't think the general public wants to be in prolonged therapy, right? Like, no, Barinder said, we want to come back to our wholeness and live our true life in presence and then give back to our communities. Okay, like take care of the earth. I think all of us just want to, feel that and be that. So I think the ayahuasca psilocybin connection right now is very, very supportive because ayahuasca is so deep in the gut, takes out all of it really creates a flora within the gut that helps the balance of the neurotransmitters actually from the gut up. And then the mushrooms actually support the neuroplasticity and new neurons within the brain area. And so the person is actually able to manifest with clarity, with joy, a future that they want to live. And so I'm really grateful for these two, the fungi and the vine coming in together.
Yeah, such powerful medicines. Those two in particular have been huge for my whatever this is. Yeah, really, really, really powerful. Like combining the two, I really love the way you're describing that, Salimeh. And I'm in a minute, I want to come back to you with a question from the audience about using psychedelics and guiding and things like that. But first, I'll have a question for all of you. The last one for me, and this one is a little bit about cultural context within psychedelics. So this industry, quote unquote, is largely informed by academia, by Western medicine. How important are the cultural, social, and historical contexts of psychedelics to your work? And could we do better at integrating these into the future of the industry? Go for it. Sorry, I should probably do better.
Absolutely. I'll speak to one of my partners at GrowTech, who some of you may know as Sohail. I've learned a lot from him. He spends a lot of time with Indigenous communities, and people will often ask him, well, why don't you just come back with the formulations, because this works and that works. And he very authentically says, because there's not mine to share. It's ours to help nurture and make sure that they continue, because there's been such hardship, both economically and socially, and the loss of, the verbal recipes being passed on. So there's a very strong component culturally with Indigenous communities, even our First Nations communities here in Canada. And we now have an opportunity to do things in their way, on their time, if they so choose, and some may choose not to. So keeping that in mind, the more traditional research and academia is also a part of the recipe. So is the capital. And this is where I always come into this conversation we have to have with ourselves is when you bake bread, you can't do it without the eggs and the milk and the flour. And we might not like the flour because of whatever reason, but then you either find a substitute or so the fundamentals of what we're trying to do in terms of changing wellness is going to require some change. It's going to acquire some adaptation, and the condition of raising capital is going to bring in those people who traditionally have had money in our society. And a lot of them don't look like the women on this panel. So I think we're going through this transition period right now. And I think that transition period is going to take some concessions, some patience, but always keep in mind, if it gets us a step closer to our goal with honest intentions from us, if it doesn't look like what we want it to look like culturally right now, let's not fight them. Let's build an understanding with others so that in a few years, it will look more like we look in the stories that we tell. So there is that cultural shift happening, but honoring those who brought the medicine to us is critical. But we do have to let new people in on the path to take it to where we need to go.
Thanks so much, Barinder. There's a word you use there that I really want to highlight: intention. Intention. I think that is really underlying so much of what's going on in the space, because I mean, the work that you do with psychedelics is so set on what is your intention. So that's always a question that I have for CEOs and people in this industry is, what really is your intention? Yeah, I'd love to pass it over to you, Stacey, if you wanted to touch a little bit on yeah, the importance of sort of the social, cultural context of this work.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that this thread is being woven into this conversation, because I think it's really, really important. Yeah, my short answer is yes, absolutely. We need to do more and do better, like 100%. You know, I think that if we don't practice what we preach and really embody, you know, the wisdom of these medicines and embody, you know, what it is that we're here to help be deliverers of and in service to, you know, we definitely run the very real risk of perpetuating all sorts of just harmful behaviors from the past and oppressive behaviors from the past. And I think we have a shared collective responsibility to do our own work and to show up into this space willing to have the hard conversations and willing to do the inner awareness work to understand where we're not being helpful and to understand how we can be more helpful in creating bridges. So, you know, I know that this is a constant evolution for us at Numinous and something we, you know, spend a lot of time and energy thinking about and trying to, you know, figure out how we can best and most respectfully, you know, hold our role in all of this. You know, where we're definitely, you know, I won't get too into it, but yeah, I mean, we obviously have, you know, committees and we have consultants and we're, you know, doing active outreach and, you know, reciprocity and just, you know, work with communities and making sure that we're staying humble, really, you know, staying humble and staying aware of the context in which all of this work is happening. And yeah, for me, at the core of a lot of my why, and I love that you raised that intention piece, Amanda. Like, I'm so glad you're asking everyone what their real intention is in this space. Like, I think that is so awesome. And you know, that's a complex answer for me, but a big part of it is, you know, caring, loving access. And so, you know, caring, loving access, that means different things for different communities. And, you know, it needs to not be a one size fits all solution. And, you know, maybe I'll just leave it there because I really want to hear Salimeh too. But yeah, thank you so much for making sure that this was integrated into the conversation.
Caring, loving access. I think that really covers it. And yes, the why is really important because we don't have a regulatory body, we don't have a college, and you know, who is dealing with ethics? Like this is medicine coming through us. And so it's like, what is spirit asking to, to build through us? And we have to continuously, like you said, Stacey, be humble, go back into the medicine. Whenever I'm like at a fork in a road, or maybe there's like an issue that's come up, I just go back into my solo ceremony, and I ask, okay, if there's something that I've missed, please show me, because, the ego is our death. Like we have to be able to continue to work with it. And thank goodness these medicines are here, because it's like, if we were left to our own avail, but we're also coming to a place where we are becoming more and more responsible, where we are able to, like Stacey said, hold all of this in context. So a few things around that. So the Canadian Psychedelic Association, one of the main reasons it came into being, and the support that's been around it, even from the beginning, Stacey, you and Peyton and Numinous has been very much support. And I know Barinder, like through our relationship, and Sohail, like these nodes of medicine, Amanda, your writings and what you went through with the regulatory board with cannabis, and like feeling it from the inside. Like we've all had different eyes on this movement. And with the cannabis movement, unfortunately, things went a bit sidelined, and the regulations became overly regulated and pushed a lot of people out, pushed a lot of growers out, pushed a lot of like small businesses out. And so with psychedelics, we didn't want the same thing to happen. And this is a reality of cannabis. And so right now, there's two tangents around this. One is the trade association that's being built within the Canadian Psychedelic Association through business roundtable. So it's bringing the community in, asking them exactly what you said, Amanda. Okay, you're starting a mushroom business. Why? Really? What is your intention? And if you're going to be part of this membership, and it's okay if you're for profit, but just be honest about it so that everyone knows. And also, if you're going to be for profit, then what is the percentage that we're all agreeing to that gets funneled back? The reciprocity, 5% maybe to social issues, and maybe 5% to the indigenous. Like, I feel that it has to go back right now. Like, the Yawanawa that you talked about, Barinder, that Sohail is connected to, same for me. I had to go and visit certain tribes based on the guidance that I received to be able to see how they're living and what they need. Because if they're the original guardians of ayahuasca, and if they're the original guardians, for example, in Gabon for Iboga, then we have to give back and ensure that they're in a good space and that they have permaculture farms. And, a lot of them didn't have much. They're in the middle of the Amazon. Like, they were eating yucca and fish. And like, they were so happy we brought rice. And yes, money can have its own issues and it's a slippery slope. I understand that. However, we have to bring them in as councils and as trusts. They are the guardians. And so speaking to them and also giving back in ways that make sense is really important. And I can't wait for a community where we not the government, it's not waiting for the government. We have an incredible government in Canada, thank you. But we as business holders and coaches and, ceremonial holders and advocates, how do we give back and we hold each other accountable? Because that's the only way we can go forward in an ethical way.
Wow, I just got lost in that. That was amazing. Totally 100% echoing everything you said there, Salimeh. It's so important that we that we remember to give back, because like you said earlier, we're building this we're not building this, actually, the foundation has already been laid, but on the shoulders of people who have been doing this work for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I think we're just about running out of time. I don't know if I might have time for one question from the audience. I think this one is maybe a little bit more for you, Salimeh, but we'll let everyone weigh in on it. From Taryn Gray, and he's asking, how do the uninitiated vet potential guides to assist with a healing journey leveraging psychedelics? For every somatic therapist that is well regarded, there appear to be a multitude of predatory practitioners who should not be trusted with patients in altered states. We've got a couple of minutes. I know this is a big, heavy question, but I think this is something that's on a lot of people's minds. So yeah, I would love to hear what you guys have to think about this. Ooh. Yeah, so
I'm
vetting,
happy to.
sorry, yeah, go ahead, Stacey, if you want to comment on that. Vetting
I should say.
psychedelic guides.
Yeah, I'm really wanting to give Salimeh an opportunity to respond to this. Like he said, I'll just quickly comment that I think it's incredibly important to look at this in a holistic way. And so, this is, yes, finding, recruiting, et cetera, the sourcing folks, but it's also, how do we create peers of communities of practice around them, and peer support networks and accountability and feedback in that way, support in that way. How do we, think about training? Through what paradigm are we viewing training, and how are we, bringing training to the table? Like it's really, what about internship and mentorship and supervision? Like how about, practicums in sites? How about experiential training and really having embodied understanding of what it is that you're working with? So I'll leave it there. I just wanted to quickly comment on that and then pass it over to Salimeh.
Thank you so much. And I think it's really each one of us, like within our own silo, right? So at Numinous, you guys are going to create your own training. Fluence has their own training. CIIS has their own training. And MAPS, like I just wanted to reference this because it's a big deal that this took place actually just May 12th. So MAPS was trying to get another study forward, and bless them for all these incredible studies that they, have conducted in the last years. But they were trying to do one for MDMA, clinical study for MDMA with healthy therapists. Now, I don't really understand what a healthy therapist is, but anyways, they said that they wanted to get this research study. So it's not just focused on patients, but they actually look at what happens with therapists who go undergo their own experience with MDMA. Because if we are offering medicine, of course we have to do our own work. And the FDA had a hold on this study for 2 years. For 2 years, it's been just waiting, and they finally released it. And so it's with studies like this that we can actually also start to see, okay, how does training work? Okay, it can't just be one sitting. Like we all know that. That's why the underground is doing so well, because the underground, we know we have to do, like if we're bringing people into the deep end of the swimming pool and we don't even know how to swim, we're going to go out there. Like who's saving who, And not that it's even about the saving. Obviously the medicine is doing the work, but we have to be trained, and we have to be trained really well. So I love that question that the individual asked around what does it take to really sit with someone? And my sense is that it has to be like, for me, I would say I wouldn't sit with someone unless I've gone through enough of my own journeys that I could do a solo journey. So I could hold my own self without any other facilitation. When a facilitator can do that and connect directly with medicine, I feel there's enough guidance there to be able to hold the self steady. And another piece is I would bring in all of the different, like almost like for a training that I look forward to would be that you would have to go through ayahuasca, psilocybin, kambo, microdose of iboga, get to know cannabis on a large dose as well, and be able to surrender in ketamine. Like I would say those are kind of the 6. And then you can start to, with the somatics, with integration, with inner child, with IFS, start to support people. But it's very deep work, and it's no joke. So yeah.